Welcome to the Writer Reads Jacob's Vision. This is part 1 of 3. The hill, with its footing of green-studded black, was the same as I remembered it. I stood at the top of the ridge, looking out, seeing the city ruins, imagining the glow from its centre at night. I'd seen the ruins and watched that glow before, with Jacob. It had always been his dream that would return, that the beacon he had set would bring rescue or aid in the rebuilding he had envisioned. Sighing, I settled myself at the foot of one of the scarred and blackened statues, and set my note-case beside me. I took the hard-bound notebook from the case, opened it, and continued writing. I had been telling of my 5th week with the Wanderers. It had been 2 days before I had begun to seek Jacob's vision in earnest, and it had been near dusk. With another sigh, I lifted my pen to continue my recollections where I had left them the night before. It was close to dusk when we met, and I looked from one face to the other. We need to find out what's in them? Kurt nodded. I scanned their faces again. Ilya with one arm in dirt-encrusted bandages, Padre, legs splintered from thigh to heel, and Ali, whose bloused shirt hid the strapping across her ribs. They all watched me in return. All right, I said. I'll go. Kurt smiled and rested his hand on my shoulder. We'll meet you at Cone Hill. I couldn't help but let my startlement show. Cone Hill? It was their term for a secret place, an unscheduled reunion. We used it in case one of us was captured. When that one was questioned, as they invariably were, the others were safe. It hadn't failed yet. I sighed, understanding, but disappointed all the same. Kurt's hand squeezed my shoulder. You'd better get started, he said. It's getting dark. I don't remember how I made it into the sheds. I went under the fence through a dust-filled hollow, I think, then across the open space surrounding the buildings before the searchlights became effective against the dusk. What I saw inside made me feel sick to the stomach. I could only bring myself to glance into the high-fenced stalls, noting the gutters and runways beneath them. There were enclosures of steel that I didn't take the time to peer into, and there were pits, pristine and concrete, that were unused and empty. I remembered visiting a similar structure after it had been used. Death had ruled there. People, survivors like myself, had been slaughtered like cattle, trapped inside the killing sheds except for the lucky few transported to be slaves for some distant despot. Jacob had led a strike team against the captors who had held the rest. Our suspicions confirmed, I left the sheds. There was another enclosure to investigate, but I was sure the team had made the right decision in leaving the area. I would make one swift pass through the sheds belonging to the second site and circle back to our camp. If I made it back tonight, Kurt and the others would still be waiting. Come dawn, and they'd be gone. Together we had watched the people manning both enclosures. Military types, but we had come to the conclusion they didn't belong to the same side. The two camps seemed to be in a state of constant hostility. It had intrigued us and given us hope. If those in one camp were cannibals and traffickers in human flesh, would it be so foolish to hope that those in the other were not? I had voiced the question, and I had been chosen to see if I was a fool. I slipped through the dust pool under the first compound's fence and crept swiftly between the rolling hummocks of grass and saltbush that separated it from the second compound. Several times I was forced to submerge myself in a convenient hollow or freeze as still as a hunted rabbit until the searchlight's beam had swept across me. The second compound was more alert. There were no dust pools beneath the parts of its fence that I could reach, and the reinforced mesh was full of sensors. I noted cameras on the fence top and was careful to avoid their arc. There was also the telltale shape of transformers indicating the fence was electrified. No entry here, and no way to discover what was inside. I widened my circle of search, hoping to find some other sign of what the compound might contain. 30 yards clear of the fence I heard voices grumbling in a thicket of sandthorn, and crept closer to listen. Do you believe this camp director's gall, not letting us in till sunup? I ask you. Another voice sighed tiredly in the dark. Leave it alone, Cormac. He's got slavers on his mind. All the more reason to let us in tonight. Nah, it's too dark. Anyway, we're safe here. The voice that was Cormac's grumbled something further, but then quietened. I wormed my way into the edge of the thorn bush, trying for a visual. My night vision goggles showed two figures by a camp stove and, more importantly, a truck in cam-netted obscurity parked in a gap in the shrubs behind them. I withdrew swiftly and circled round to the truck. This was my entry. I crawled beneath the hulking vehicle and wormed my way into the cleft above its front axle. Now I could rest. I woke to the thunderous rumble of the truck's engine and a grinding of gears. Bracing myself as I was jolted in the perch I had found, I held back a surge of excitement and fear. I was on my way. The guards on the gate gave me pause to worry when they joked with Cormac about stopping to pick up hitchhikers. Cormac grumbled a reply so obviously without humour that I nearly joined in the laughter at his expense, and the truck rolled through. I waited for the truck to stop on the other side. I thought perhaps it would come to a halt behind the towers on the gate, but it didn't. It kept going until it felt as though it was running the full length of the enclosure. The ground grew rougher as it progressed, the unforgiving axle passing on every bump and jolt until I felt my grip shaking loose. After it had run what I guessed to be the length of the perimeter, the truck slowed and took a corner. I tried to visualize where we were in relation to the shadowy domes I had seen the night before. The truck ran what I thought was half the perimeter's depth and took another corner. It was definitely heading for the domes. This might turn out better than I'd hoped. My fingers slipped and I began to slide from my perch. Lunging for purchase, I failed to find a hold and felt a fingernail tear. I bounced off the shelf and over the axle, scrabbling for purchase. The ground grazed my legs, stomach, and arms as I fell beneath the chassis, coiling reflexively into a ball to avoid the oncoming wheels. The wheels rumbled by on either side, too close for comfort, and then the sun shone down and I was in the open. Cautiously unrolling, I lifted my head and looked around. There were two guards in camouflaged uniforms standing in front of a dome not 10 feet away. I froze, scanning for cover. I had just decided the dome was it when one of them went from staring relaxedly past his partner at the truck to alertly studying me. Crap. I got up and ran, the movement alerting his partner. They shouted as I set my sights on some sort of suspended bubble-shaped container. It was the closest cover I could reach, and I was hoping it would provide me with some kind of cover from their weapons. Where I'd go to next, I had no idea. The bubble looked like some sort of torture chamber, or a pump house for a well or something. If it was a torture chamber, I didn't want to be anywhere near it. Same for if it was a pump house. Unfortunately, the situation didn't give me much of a choice. Shelter, any kind of shelter, was better than a bullet any day. I heard the crack of a rifle, took a sliding dive under the bubble's edges, hit concrete, and lost more skin as another shot rang out. I came up cursing. Shower bay. Sprayer on the walls, taps underneath it. Open door facing another small building opposite. I bolted across the 2 meters separating them, slid under the side of a second shower bay, and came up on the other side. Took a bead on one of the domes with the idea of getting inside and lying low before anyone could work out where I'd gone. It was a thin hope, a pipe dream in reality, but desperation to escape capture made me try. I'd gone half the distance before guards shouted again. No way. Not stopping. Sorry, guys, too shit scared. You missed the first time, you'll probably miss again. Please miss again. Another voice joined the first two, deep and full of authority. It almost halted me in my tracks. Almost. Except underlying the unmistakable aura of command, there was an element of unvoiced menace that only made me run harder. I heard footsteps behind me, gaining, another guard coming from the perimeter to my left, or maybe the gate towers themselves. A long way to run, he'd be tired, but again that voice rang out. Commanded to halt, I turned my gaze from the dome I was heading toward and glanced at the guard. He was ahead of me, coming in at an angle, definitely from one of the guard towers, and coming in faster than I'd known a man could run. He was on a perfect line to reach me before I could reach the dome. A glance behind me confirmed the two guards had made it past the shower sheds and had a clear line of fire. Both had stopped just clear of the last shed and raised their rifles to their shoulders. Nobody's fool. I threw myself into a slide and stopped. When no shots were fired, I lifted my head and very slowly got to my feet. The two guards tracked me with their rifles, but didn't move, so I slowly turned to face the third guard, the guard with the voice of command. I held my hands away from my body, watching him slow his pace to a walk. When he shouted again, I found I didn't understand his order. He repeated the command, gesturing downward with his hand. I still didn't understand what was wanted, so I stayed where I was, not moving, trying to get my breathing back under control. The command was repeated a third time, but this time he stopped, and I became truly afraid. His hand went to the gun at his belt as his other hand repeated the chopping downward motion. Any second now, I was going to die.